So how do we improve our decision making and increase our decisiveness overall? This is one of the most important attributes of being successful. Ask anyone who is widely successful in whatever industry they're in, and they'll say that it ultimately came down to the decisions they made and how decisive they were in those moments of decision. Essentially, a fork diverged in the road and you take the path less traveled, if you will. But what does it mean exactly to make a decision? Typically, we think of making a decision as in selecting into something, but the word decision comes from the Latin root decisio, which means to cut off. So decision making is far more about cutting off alternate options than it is about selecting into a singular option. I think it's helpful to understand that root and helpful to think about it this way, because one of the best modalities or methods for decision making is starting at the things you know you can or want to remove. Especially if you're left with a lot of optionality, you probably are familiar with the paradox of choice, knowing that our quality of life doesn't actually increase when we have more options. In fact, it makes it a lot harder. Life is pretty much a game of infinite options. If you're blessed to be in a Western country, or obviously to see this video, you have access to the internet, so you're probably on the more fortunate end of the spectrum, which means you have better options than most people in human history, at least that we know of, and certainly most people who are alive today. This is of course a privilege, but it comes with the other edge of that sword, which is you need to be decisive to be successful. You cannot spend your entire life chasing after every fleeting or shiny object. You have to make decisions and cut off alternate options that aren't going to be the ones that serve you. And this is something I personally struggle with greatly. I'm somebody who is extremely high efficacy, extremely high agency, and believe I can pretty much be successful in almost anything I do. But the danger there is I have to choose one thing and stick with it long enough to be successful. The quote comes to mind, and Noah Ryan, who I've had on my podcast twice now, has mentioned this both times, and I know it's important to him as well, is that you can have anything you want, you just can't have everything you want. And I think that across your entire life, you actually can have everything, but what the quote is pointing at is that you can't have it all at the same time. And this is kind of blatantly obvious in the immediacy of a single moment, right? You can't be, say, relaxing on the beach, having kind of a very relaxing experience, but also experiencing the euphoria of achieving, finishing a marathon or Ironman, or competing in martial arts. So even in individual moments, you obviously can only be embodying kind of one thing at a time. Your life is kind of the same thing. You have to have well-defined seasons, or else you'll just be very spread out. I think there's been a myth of the well-balanced life, and this is similar to yesterday's video. I think balance is important in the micro, but not important in the macro. And what I mean by that is it's important to have each day balanced so that you're filling all of your different cups, whether that be relationship, your physical health, your mental health, and then of course, whatever large mission you're chasing after. But in the macro, you do not need balance. And in fact, you'll hurt yourself at achieving each one of your individual goals if you don't really dive into unbalanced seasons. If you want to be the best fighter in the world, you need to train more than one time a day for weeks on end. That's probably going to take a hit on your relationships and your work. If you want to have a very successful business, it might take 3, 6, 8, 10 months of working 12, 18-hour days, working on weekends to get to 10, 20, 30K a month. But then you get there, and then you can dive into the things that you've had to put potentially on the back burner for a while, whether it be your relationships, your physical health, etc. Hopefully, you can make it a sustainable practice, meaning the micro, like you're still giving yourself, taking care of your physical body every single day, tapping into your relationships, but there needs to be one defining aim for each season that you're in, whether that season is years long, months long, weeks long, or maybe it's just a sprint of a certain week, so it's only a number of days. But that is where you will find the most effective results in a time period where you place all of your attention on one thing rather than spreading your attention on a number of things. Again, this is something I have to hold myself accountable to. I should correct my previous phrase of struggle with, but it's something I'm cognizant of, and it's something that I know I need to focus on and be clear with defining what season I'm in and what I'm maximizing for. And circling back to decision making and being decisive, it is cutting off the optionality and the other things that you're not focusing on. And someone who is decisive simply shrinks the time between options and decision made. You're presented with the various things you could be doing. How quickly can you get yourself to a place and be clear internally with, oh, I know I knew what I need to do, which means I'm cutting off all of these other options. And if you're someone who struggles with being decisive, I think two things are helpful. One is you can immediately start with cutting off the least savory option just to start the process, because there's certainly one thing you probably don't want to do more than the other things. So you can start there simply by writing that off and saying, I'm not touching that option at all. And then from there, the next thing that you least want to be doing, and you can kind of slowly march your way towards ultimately getting to the singular focus that you have. And then secondly, it is worthwhile to run an experiment for yourself where you make a fast action, train your intuition, and in the moment of decision, make it with blind faith, choose and move forward. And what you would discover is that you can't actually make the wrong decision, because the right decision is the one that you make, and you either win with that decision or you learn. There is no failure, and you just continue to iterate on. And you'll also be surprised at how much more comfortable you can get with making these fast decisions. Again, this is a separator from the average, the mediocre, and the highly, highly successful, is how quickly you can make decisions and be decisive in important moments, because your most valuable asset is where you're placing your attention with the finite time that you do have here. So if you spend weeks or months ideating, should I quit? Should I not? Should I leave this relationship? Should I not? Should I post this video? Should I not? That waiting time, not only does it suck because you're in your head the whole time, but weeks and months will go by and you will have not marched towards the goal that you're moving for yourself. So in order to be more decisive, practice cutting off the options that do not serve you. And if you struggle with decisiveness in general, run the experiment of making a fast action, making a rapid decision as fast as possible. And it even plays into the small things. This is a practice that you need to curate in your life. Don't spend a bunch of time looking at a menu. The first time you find something that you like, order it as fast as possible. Just make the decision. Practice making these decisions on the micro, so that when you come to the macro, that muscle is trained and you feel ready to make that decision. I know that these practices have helped serve me, and I know that simply understanding the root of the word has so much power. Now, when you make a decision, you're cutting off the dead parts. You're discarding the things that don't serve you. And all that remains is the decision that does serve you and the option that you want to go with. So that's all for this one. Comment below what you thought, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.